Montana Territory, 1873. The dust from the cattle drive still hung in the air as Owen Marshall squinted against the setting sun. His 24 years had hardened his body, but not his heart, and something about the frail figure stumbling along the roadside stirred compassion in him that the harsh western frontier had yet to wither. "Whoa there," he called, pulling back on his chestnut mare's reins. The woman's dress, once fine but now threadbare, billowed in the prairie wind. Her dark blonde hair had mostly escaped its pins, and even from horseback, Owen could see the hollowness in her cheeks. She carried nothing but a worn leather portfolio clutched to her chest. "Ma'am," he asked, dismounting with the easy grace of a man who'd spent more time in the saddle than on his own 2 feet. "You look like you could use some help." She startled like a fawn, her blue-green eyes wide with a mixture of fear and resignation. "I'm perfectly fine, thank you," she said, though her voice cracked with thirst. She took a step backward, nearly stumbling. Owen held up his hands. "I mean no harm. My ranch is just over that ridge. You look like you could use a meal and some water at least." "I don't accept charity from strangers," she replied, lifting her chin despite the obvious exhaustion etched in every line of her slender frame. "Owen Marshall," he said, tipping his hat. "There, now we're not strangers." His smile came easily, revealing straight teeth and dimples that had earned him attention from ladies in Helena. His light brown hair curled at the nape of his neck, and 3 days' worth of stubble couldn't hide his strong jawline. A ghost of a smile touched her lips before she swayed on her feet. Owen lunged forward, catching her before she hit the dirt road. "I'm Naomi Kent," she whispered, before her eyelids fluttered closed. What would drive a clearly educated young woman to wander alone in such a state? And what treasures might that portfolio contain that she'd guarded even as she starved? Naomi awoke to unfamiliar walls and the smell of beef stew. For a moment, panic seized her. The last thing she remembered was the handsome cowboy's concerned face as darkness claimed her. She sat up quickly, relieved to find herself fully clothed save for her boots. "Easy there," came a motherly voice from the doorway. A plump woman with gray-streaked hair entered, carrying a tray. "I'm Mrs. Hollis, the housekeeper. You gave young Mr. Marshall quite a scare." "My portfolio," Naomi said, her voice hoarse. "Where is—" "Right there by the bed, untouched." Mrs. Hollis nodded toward the nightstand. "Though I don't know what could be so precious in there that you'd nearly die protecting it." Naomi's fingers closed around the worn leather. "It's all I have left." "Well, you have a roof and a hot meal now, too. The master says you're welcome to stay until you're well." "The master?" Naomi asked, taking the offered bowl of stew with trembling hands. "Owen Marshall owns the Silverleaf Ranch. His father passed 2 years back, left him the whole spread." Mrs. Hollis bustled around the small but clean bedroom. "He's a good man. Too young to be carrying such responsibility, but he manages." Naomi took a cautious spoonful of stew, then another with less restraint. "I can't stay," she said between bites. "I'm heading to San Francisco." Mrs. Hollis raised an eyebrow. "That's another 400 miles, miss. And you'll not make it 10 without proper provisions." Before Naomi could respond, boots sounded in the hallway. Owen appeared in the doorway, hat in hand. The evening light from the window caught the gold flecks in his hazel eyes, and Naomi found herself staring longer than propriety allowed. "Glad to see you're awake, Miss Kent," he said. "Thought we might have to fetch the doctor from town." "Mr. Marshall," she acknowledged, suddenly conscious of her disheveled appearance. "I'm indebted to your kindness, but I'll be on my way tomorrow." Owen leaned against the doorframe. "And how do you plan to get to wherever you're going?" "San Francisco," she admitted. "I'll find work in the next town, save enough to continue west." He studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "San Francisco's a long way off, and winter's coming. Why not stay through the season? Mrs. Hollis could use help with the house, and we pay fair wages." Mrs. Hollis beamed. "Oh, that would be wonderful. The ranch hands are decent boys, but this place needs a woman's touch beyond what these old hands can manage." Naomi hesitated. The idea of a safe place to stay, with honest work and regular meals, was tempting. But strangers rarely offered something for nothing, and experience had taught her caution. "What's the catch, Mr. Marshall?" His eyebrows rose. "No catch, just offering work to someone who needs it." "And what would my duties include?" she asked, the emphasis making her meaning clear. A flush crept up Owen's neck. "Nothing improper, Miss Kent. I run a respectable ranch. You'd help Mrs. Hollis with cooking and keeping the house. That's all. Mrs. Hollis clucked her tongue. Girl, if you're worried about your virtue, you couldn't be safer. This boy blushes if a lady shows her ankles. Mrs. Hollis. Owen protested, the red deepening in his cheeks. Despite herself, Naomi smiled. There was something disarming about his embarrassment, something genuine that her years of hardship hadn't entirely taught her to distrust. I'll stay until spring, she decided. But I pay my own way. I don't accept charity. Owen nodded. Fair enough. Rest up. We can talk more tomorrow. As he turned to leave, Naomi called after him. Mr. Marshall? My portfolio. It contains my paintings. It's how I intend to make my living in San Francisco. He glanced back, curious. You're an artist? Yes. Not that it's done me much good so far. A slow smile spread across his face. I'd like to see them sometime. If you're willing. After he left, Naomi sank back against the pillows. What had possessed her to mention her art? The last time she'd shown her work to a man. But Owen Marshall isn't Jerome Wilson, she reminded herself. At least, he doesn't seem to be. Still, as sleep reclaimed her, Naomi wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake in accepting his offer, or the first right choice in a long string of wrong ones. The following week settled into a rhythm Naomi hadn't experienced since before her father's death. She rose early with Mrs. Hollis to prepare breakfast for the ranch hands, spent the mornings cleaning and mending, and the afternoons baking or preserving the late fall harvest. To her surprise, Owen worked alongside his men, coming in for meals with his shirt sleeves rolled up and dirt under his nails. Most ranchers I've known prefer giving orders to doing the work, she remarked one evening as she served him coffee in the study. Owen looked up from his ledgers. My father believed a man shouldn't ask others to do what he wouldn't do himself. His fingers tapped the leather-bound book. Besides, working cattle keeps me honest. Can't hide from yourself on the back of a horse. Naomi found herself studying his profile, the straight nose, the firm line of his jaw, now clean-shaven after his weekly shave. At 24, he carried responsibility that would bow most men twice his age, yet there was a lightness to him that defied the burden. Have you shown anyone your paintings? He asked, changing the subject. Naomi stiffened. Not since arriving here. I don't mean to pry, he said quickly. It's just that you mentioned them that first night, and I've been curious. She hesitated. They're personal. Of course. He returned to his ledgers, and Naomi felt a strange pang of disappointment. Perhaps someday, she added, surprising herself. When they're ready. Owen smiled, a genuine warmth that reached his eyes. I'd be honored. That night, for the first time in months, Naomi opened her portfolio. The Montana landscape had captured her imagination. The vast skies, the way light played across the mountain ranges, the texture of the tall grass prairie. Her fingers itched to hold a brush again, to capture the raw beauty that surrounded the Silverleaf Ranch. The next morning, she approached Owen as he saddled his horse. Mr. Marshall, I was wondering if there might be someplace I could paint? A room with good light, perhaps. His face brightened. The old sunroom off the west wing. My mother used it for her plants before she passed. It's been sitting empty for years. He led her to a room with tall windows that captured the morning light. Dust covers draped the sparse furniture, but Naomi could see the potential immediately. It's perfect, she breathed. It needs cleaning, he said apologetically. I'll take care of that. But I'll need supplies, canvas, paints, brushes. Owen considered this. There's a general store in Helena that might have some basics. I'm heading there tomorrow for supplies. Write down what you need. That night, Naomi made a detailed list, trying to be modest in her requests. When Owen returned the next evening, however, he carried not just the items she'd requested but additional colors, finer brushes, and even an easel. The shopkeeper said an artist would need these as well, he explained, looking pleased with himself. Naomi ran her fingers over the supplies, emotion tightening her throat. This is too generous. Consider it an investment, Owen said. You can pay me back with a painting for the dining room. Over the next weeks, as winter settled across the Montana landscape, Naomi found herself flourishing. With proper food and rest, her body regained its health. Her hair, once dull, now shone golden in the sunlight as she worked in her makeshift studio. Her first painting for Owen, a sunset over the ranch's western pastures, hung proudly in the dining room, drawing compliments from the ranch hands and visitors alike. Yet even as comfort and security wrapped around her, Naomi kept parts of herself guarded. Owen noticed her reluctance to discuss her past, the way she startled at sudden movements, how she sometimes watched the road as if expecting someone to appear. "Whatever you're running from," he said quietly one evening as they sat before the fire, "you're safe here." Naomi looked up from her mending. "What makes you think I'm running from something?" "The way you watch the horizon. The nightmares Mrs. Hollis says wake you screaming." He held her gaze. "I don't need to know what it is, Naomi, but I want you to know that I'd never let anyone hurt you." The use of her given name, so intimate in the firelight, made her heart skip. "Owen," she said, testing his name on her lips. "Some ghosts follow no matter how far you run." His hands, strong from years of ranch work, covered hers gently. "Then perhaps it's time to stand and face them." Before she could respond, the front door banged open. A ranch hand, his face grim, stood in the doorway. "Boss, riders coming. 6 men, armed, and they're asking for a woman." Owen's grip on her hands tightened fractionally before he released her and stood. "Get my rifle, Tom, and tell the boys to be ready." Naomi felt the blood drain from her face. "It's him," she whispered. "He's found me." Who was hunting Naomi with such determination? And would Owen stand between her and danger, even knowing nothing of her past? The riders approached the main house with an arrogance that made Owen's jaw clench. At their lead was a man in his 40s, expensively dressed despite the travel dust, with cold eyes and a mouth like a trap. "That's Jerome Wilson," Naomi whispered from the window. "My former patron." Owen positioned himself on the porch, shotgun visible but not aimed. His ranch hands spread out strategically, making it clear this would not be an easy fight. "Evening, gentlemen," Owen called as the riders stopped in the yard. "You're a long way from anywhere." The leader, Wilson, surveyed the ranch with obvious disdain. "I'm looking for a young woman. Blonde, pretty. Stolen property of mine." "Don't see how a woman could be property," Owen replied evenly. "Unless you mean a wife, and even then, the law might disagree with your choice of words." Wilson's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Not a wife. An investment. The girl took something valuable from me. I've come to retrieve it." "Got no thieves here," Owen said. "Just honest folk trying to get through winter." Wilson dismounted, his movements deliberate. "The girl calls herself Naomi Kent. She's a painter, or fancies herself one. Ran off with a portfolio of work I commissioned and paid for." Owen felt Naomi tense behind him. "Haven't seen anyone by that description," he lied smoothly. "Now it's getting late. You gentlemen are welcome to water your horses, but then I'd appreciate you moving along." Wilson's eyes narrowed. "You have a reputation for honesty, Marshall. Don't soil it for some thieving little." "Careful," Owen cut him off. "Whatever grievance you think you have, this is my land. I decide who stays and who goes." For a tense moment, Owen thought Wilson might order his men to attack. Instead, the older man reached into his coat and withdrew a folded paper. A warrant for her arrest, signed by a judge in Denver. Theft of property valued over $500. Wilson smiled thinly. "Now, if you're harboring a fugitive, that makes you an accomplice." Owen didn't flinch. "Like I said, haven't seen anyone matching that description." Wilson handed the paper to one of his men. "Search the house," he ordered, "and the outbuildings." "You have no authority here," Owen said, raising his shotgun slightly. "6 guns say otherwise," Wilson replied coldly. Before the situation could escalate further, the front door opened. Naomi stepped onto the porch, her face pale but determined. "That's enough," she said. "I won't have blood shed on my account." "Naomi, don't," Owen warned, but she moved past him. Wilson's smile widened. "There's my little runaway." "The paintings are mine," Naomi said firmly. "You paid for my room and board while I worked, not ownership of my art." "That wasn't our arrangement, my dear, as the contract clearly states. A contract I signed under duress, after you had my father arrested on false charges." Her voice shook with anger. "You threatened to let him die in prison if I didn't agree to your terms." Owen stepped forward. "Is this true?" Wilson shrugged. "Business is business. The old man owed me money. I offered his daughter a way to pay his debts. By making her your prisoner," Owen said, disgust evident in his voice. "By recognizing talent and providing opportunity," Wilson corrected, "until she became difficult. Now, Miss Kent, gather your things." We're leaving. She's not going anywhere, Owen said, his rifle now pointed squarely at Wilson's chest. Wilson's men reached for their weapons, but froze when every ranch hand brought their rifles to bear. The standoff stretched, the only sound the winter wind whistling through the yard. Finally, Wilson raised his hands in mock surrender. You're willing to die for some paintings? For a person's right to their own work in life? Yes, Owen answered without hesitation. Naomi stepped forward. I'll make you a deal, Mr. Wilson. I have 3 new paintings completed. You can have them in exchange for tearing up that warrant and leaving me in peace. Wilson considered this. Let me see them first. Under Owen's protective gaze, they moved to Naomi's studio. 3 canvases stood against the wall, breathtaking landscapes of the Montana Territory, rendered with a skill that even Wilson couldn't deny. These are exceptional, he admitted reluctantly. Better than anything you did in Denver. Freedom inspires, Naomi said simply. Wilson circled the paintings, calculating. These would fetch a good price in New York. Perhaps triple what your earlier work sold for. Then we have a deal? Naomi pressed. The older man studied her face. You've changed, Naomi. Grown a spine. He glanced at Owen. Found yourself a protector, too. Found myself, she corrected. The paintings for my freedom. Yes or no? Wilson nodded slowly. Yes, but I want one more. A portrait. Of you. Owen stepped forward. That wasn't part of the deal. It's all right, Naomi said, touching his arm. I'll do it. As Wilson's men carefully packed the 3 landscapes, Naomi set up a canvas and began to paint. Hour after hour passed, the tension in the room thick enough to cut. When she finally stepped back, even Owen gasped. The portrait showed Naomi, but not as Wilson would have expected. She stood tall, brush in hand, against the backdrop of the Silverleaf Ranch. But her eyes, those were the masterpiece. In them, Naomi had captured a journey from fear to freedom, from desperation to dignity. Wilson stared at the canvas, something unreadable flickering across his face. You never painted like this for me. I never lived like this with you, she replied simply. To everyone's surprise, Wilson laughed, a short, harsh sound. Well played, Miss Kent. He took the portrait, then removed the warrant from his coat pocket and tore it in 2. Our business is concluded. Don't expect such generosity again. After Wilson and his men rode away, Owen found Naomi in the studio, trembling with delayed reaction. You stood up to him, Owen said softly. That took courage. I was terrified, she admitted. Being brave doesn't mean you aren't scared. It means you do what's right despite the fear. He hesitated. Will you tell me the whole story now? Naomi nodded slowly. Yes, I think it's time. What painful truths would Naomi reveal about her past? And would Owen's feelings change once he knew everything? They sat before the fireplace as Naomi revealed her story. Her father, once a respected professor in Boston, had fallen on hard times after her mother's death. Desperate and drinking heavily, he borrowed money from Jerome Wilson, not understanding the predatory terms. When he couldn't pay, Wilson had him arrested, Naomi explained, her voice hollow with old pain. Then he came to me with an offer. Work for him as an artist, painting whatever he demanded, and he'd see the charges dropped. So you agreed, Owen said softly. Naomi nodded. At first, it was landscapes and still lives. Innocent work. But then, she swallowed hard. He began demanding portraits of me, more revealing with each one. When I refused, he threatened my father again. Owen's hands clenched into fists. Did he? No, Naomi said quickly. But not for lack of trying. The night I escaped, he'd been drinking. Said he was tired of just painting me. Her voice broke. I struck him with a paperweight and ran. Took only my portfolio and what I was wearing. And your father? Her eyes filled with tears. Died in prison before I could earn enough to pay his debt. Wilson made sure of that. That's when I knew I'd never be free as long as he could find me. Owen moved to sit beside her, taking her hands in his. You are free now. He won't come back. You can't know that, she whispered. I'll make sure of it, he promised. No one will hurt you again, Naomi. In the firelight, with his face set in determination, Owen looked older than his years. Something shifted between them, a recognition of shared purpose, of protection offered and accepted. Why did you help me? Naomi asked suddenly. That first day on the road. I was nothing to you. Owen considered this. My mother always said that a person's character is revealed in how they treat those who can offer nothing in return. He smiled slightly. Besides, there was something in your eyes. A fire that hardship hadn't extinguished. Impulsively, Naomi leaned forward and pressed her lips to his cheek. Thank you, she whispered. Owen turned, their faces inches apart. Naomi. He breathed her name like a prayer. The moment stretched, fragile as spun glass, before Mrs. Hollis's voice from the hallway broke the spell. Mr. Marshall, letter from the cattle buyer in Helena. They moved apart, the connection unbroken but postponed. As Owen went to take the letter, Naomi touched her lips, wondering at her own boldness. Spring arrived with a burst of wildflowers and renewed purpose. Naomi had continued painting throughout the winter, her work evolving as her confidence grew. The walls of the ranch house now showcased her art, vibrant landscapes, touching portraits of the ranch hands, and scenes of daily life that captured the spirit of the Silverleaf. One morning, a visitor arrived, a well-dressed gentleman from Helena who introduced himself as Thomas Parker, owner of the territory's largest general store. I was at the Hendersons' dinner party last month, he explained to Owen. Couldn't take my eyes off that painting in their dining room. They said it was by an artist staying at your ranch. Owen glanced at Naomi, who had been hanging freshly laundered curtains. That would be Miss Kent. Mr. Parker turned, appraising Naomi with new interest. Miss Kent, your work is extraordinary. The way you capture the light of this territory, I've never seen anything like it. Thank you, Naomi said, smoothing her apron self-consciously. I'd like to commission several pieces for my store and home, Parker continued. And more importantly, I have connections with galleries in Denver and San Francisco. With your permission, I'd like to show them your work. Naomi froze, her dreams suddenly within reach. San Francisco? Yes. I believe your paintings would create quite a stir there. Owen's expression remained carefully neutral. That's wonderful news, isn't it, Naomi? She looked between Owen and Mr. Parker, conflicting emotions battling within her. Ah, yes, of course. After discussing terms, Mr. Parker departed with promises to return in a week to see more of her work. When the sound of his carriage faded, Owen turned to Naomi. San Francisco, he said, his tone unreadable. Just as you planned. Yes, she replied, though with less enthusiasm than she might have expected. Though I hadn't considered selling my work without traveling there myself. You could still go, Owen said, not meeting her eyes. Nothing keeping you here now that Wilson's gone. The statement hung between them, weighted with unspoken questions. Naomi studied Owen's profile, recognizing the tension in his jaw. Nothing, she asked softly. Before he could answer, Mrs. Hollis bustled in, oblivious to the charged moment. Mail's here, and there's a letter from your sister, Mr. Marshall. Owen took the letter, seemingly grateful for the interruption. Excuse me, he murmured, retreating to his study. Naomi watched him go, an unfamiliar ache settling in her chest. For months, she had focused on surviving, on healing, on creating. She hadn't allowed herself to consider what, or who, might give her reason to stay. Later that evening, Owen found her in the garden, sketching as the sun set behind the mountains. My sister's coming to visit, he said without preamble. Olivia. She lives in St. Louis with her husband. That's wonderful, Naomi replied. You must miss her. I do. He settled beside her on the bench. She wants to see the ranch. Says she's curious about the artist who's made her brother's home famous in Helena society. Naomi raised an eyebrow. Famous might be an exaggeration. Not according to her sources. Owen grinned. Apparently, Silverleaf is becoming known for more than just its cattle. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching as the sky painted itself in the very colors Naomi so often captured on canvas. Will you be here when she arrives? Owen finally asked, his voice carefully casual. Or will you be on your way to San Francisco by then? Naomi set down her sketchbook. Do you want me to stay? Owen turned to face her fully. From the moment I found you on that road, I've only wanted what would make you happy, Naomi. If that's San Francisco, then that's not what I asked, she interrupted gently. Do you want me to stay? In the fading light, she could see the struggle in his expression, between honesty and nobility, between desire and what he perceived as selflessness. Yes, he finally admitted. More than I've wanted anything. But I won't keep you from your dreams. Naomi's heart quickened. What if my dreams have changed? Owen's breath caught. Have they? Before she could answer, the dinner bell rang, summoning them inside. The moment fragmented, leaving both with unspoken words on their lips and hope blooming cautiously in their hearts. Could Naomi's artistic dreams and her growing feelings for Owen coexist? Or would she have to choose between the life she'd planned and the one she'd found? The arrival of Olivia Marshall and her husband, Charles Thornton, brought new energy to the ranch. Olivia, 3 years older than Owen, shared his warm hazel eyes and easy laugh, though her manner carried the polish of city living. "So you're the artist who's captivated Helena society," Olivia said during their first dinner, studying Naomi with friendly curiosity. "And my brother as well, it seems." Owen nearly choked on his water. "Livy, please." "What?" "I'm merely observing that you've mentioned Miss Kent in every letter for months." Olivia turned back to Naomi. "He's quite the admirer of your work." "The whole territory is," Charles added diplomatically. "Your paintings capture something essential about this landscape." Naomi felt herself blushing under the combined attention. "Thank you. The land here inspires me." "Just the land?" Olivia asked innocently. "Olivia," Owen warned, though his eyes held amusement more than anger. The conversation shifted to ranch business, but throughout the evening, Naomi caught Olivia watching the interactions between her and Owen with obvious interest. The next morning, Olivia joined Naomi in her studio as she prepared canvases for Mr. Parker's return. "You're very talented," Olivia said, examining a half-finished painting of ranch hands driving cattle. "I can see why my brother is so taken with your work." "Owen has been very supportive," Naomi replied carefully. Olivia smiled. "It's not just your art he admires, Naomi. I know my brother. I haven't seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Naomi's hands stilled on the canvas. "He's a kind man. He would have helped anyone in my situation. Perhaps. But he wouldn't have kept every painting you've ever given him, even the practice sketches." Olivia picked up a small brush, turning it in her fingers. "Did you know he sends your paintings to St. Louis for proper framing? Says the local carpenter doesn't do them justice." Warmth bloomed in Naomi's chest. "I didn't know that. Owen's always been the responsible one, taking care of others. The ranch. Even me, after our parents died." Olivia set the brush down. "I worry he'll never allow himself happiness if it means putting his own desires first." "What are you saying? That if you feel something for my brother, you might need to be the brave one?" Olivia's expression softened. "He would never ask you to give up your dreams for him." Naomi thought about San Francisco, about Mr. Parker's offers, about the path she had been so certain was her destiny. Then she thought about mornings with Owen, his quiet support, the way her heart raced when their hands accidentally touched. "What if I don't know what my dreams are anymore?" she asked quietly. Olivia squeezed her hand. "Then perhaps it's time to paint a new picture of your future." That afternoon, Owen took Naomi riding to his favorite spot on the ranch, a high meadow overlooking the valley, where wildflowers carpeted the earth in brilliant color. "I thought you might want to paint this," he explained as they dismounted. "The flowers won't last long." "It's beautiful," Naomi breathed, turning slowly to take in the panoramic view. Owen spread a blanket on the grass. "I used to come here with my father when I was a boy. He said you could see the whole world from this hill." They sat together, sharing a simple lunch Mrs. Hollis had packed. The easy silence between them felt precious to Naomi, a comfort she hadn't known was possible between a man and woman. "Mr. Parker returns tomorrow," Owen said eventually, plucking a stem of grass. "Have you decided about his offer?" Naomi watched a hawk circling overhead. "I've been thinking about that. About San Francisco." And his voice remained steady, though she could see the tension in his shoulders. "I've spent so long running towards something, or away from something, that I never considered I might find what I was looking for in an unexpected place." She turned to face him. "Owen, when you found me on that road, I was lost in more ways than one." "You found your way," he said softly. "Your talent, your strength. They were always there. But I needed safety to rediscover them. You gave me that." She gathered her courage. "The truth is, I don't want to leave. Not just because of my art, but because of Owen." "Naomi." Charles's voice carried up the hillside, interrupting her confession. He rode toward them at a gallop, his expression urgent. "You need to come back. Riders approaching, and one of them is Jerome Wilson." Owen was on his feet instantly. "Wilson? That's impossible." He agreed. He's not alone, Charles continued. There's a man with him. Says he's a federal marshal. Naomi felt the blood drain from her face. He wouldn't give up so easily. I should have known. Owen helped her onto her horse, his face grim. Whatever he's planning, we'll face it together. As they rode back to the ranch, Naomi's mind raced. Had Wilson fabricated new charges? Would a federal marshal believe his lies over her truth? The freedom she'd begun to take for granted suddenly felt precarious again. When they reached the ranch yard, Wilson sat smugly on his horse beside a stern-faced man wearing a marshal's badge. 5 armed men accompanied them, their hands resting casually on their weapons. Miss Kent, the marshal called. I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of theft and destruction of property. What destruction? Owen demanded, positioning his horse protectively beside Naomi's. Wilson smirked. The little wildcat damaged valuable artwork during her hasty departure from my employ and assaulted me in the process. That's not true, Naomi protested. I defended myself when you... Let's not air unsavory details, Wilson interrupted smoothly. The fact remains, you took what wasn't yours and injured me in the process. The law is clear. The marshal shifted uncomfortably. Miss, you'll need to come with us to Helena to answer these charges. Owen dismounted, his movements deliberately calm despite the fury in his eyes. Marshal, I'd like to see that warrant. While they examined the paper, Olivia moved to Naomi's side. Something's not right, she whispered. Charles says Wilson was drinking in the saloon in town yesterday, boasting about taking you back to Denver. Said he'd break your spirit properly this time. Fear gripped Naomi's heart. Once in Wilson's custody, who knew what might happen before they ever reached a proper courthouse? Owen returned, his expression thunderous. The warrant's legitimate on its face, but I'm coming with you to Helena. That won't be necessary, Wilson said. We can handle one small woman. Either I accompany her, or you'll have to shoot me to take her, Owen replied evenly. Your choice. The tension crackled between them until the marshal nodded reluctantly. Fine, but just you, Marshal. As preparations were made for the journey, Naomi fought rising panic. Even with Owen beside her, Wilson had money and influence. If the judge in Helena was in his pocket. While the others were distracted, Olivia pressed something into Naomi's hands, a small leather-bound book. Owen's journal, she whispered. He writes about you. Read it, and know that whatever happens, you're not alone anymore. What revelations would Owen's private journal contain? And would Naomi find the courage to fight for her freedom, and perhaps for love, one final time? The journey to Helena took a full day, tension riding alongside them like another passenger. Owen kept Naomi's horse close to his eyes constantly scanning for any threat. Wilson rode at the front with the marshal, occasionally glancing back with a self-satisfied smile that made Naomi's skin crawl. That evening, camped along the trail, Owen managed a moment alone with Naomi while the others prepared dinner. I won't let him take you, he promised in a low voice. Charles is riding ahead to Helena tonight to speak with Judge Morrison. He's an honest man who won't be swayed by Wilson's money. And if the judge isn't available? If Wilson's influence reaches further than we think? Naomi couldn't keep the fear from her voice. Owen took her hands, his grasp warm and steady. Then we'll run. Together. I know every trail and hiding place in this territory. You would do that? Leave everything you've built. A ranch is just land and buildings, Naomi. His eyes held hers intently. What matters is who you share it with. The depth of emotion in his words stole her breath. Before she could respond, the marshal called them to the fire. That night, while the camp slept, Naomi carefully withdrew Olivia's gift from her saddlebag. By moonlight, she opened Owen's journal, her heart pounding. The early entries were practical, notes on cattle, weather, ranch improvements. But then, dated the day they met. Found a woman on the road today. Half-starved but too proud to ask for help. Something about her eyes, like she's seen too much hardship but refuses to be broken by it. Brought her to the ranch. Mrs. Hollis thinks I'm crazy. Maybe I am. As she continued reading, Naomi's vision blurred with tears. Owen had recorded his growing admiration, his concern during her recovery, his awe at her talent. But more moving were the personal reflections. Naomi laughed today, really laughed. Like sunshine breaking through clouds. Found myself wanting to hear it again. And later, she painted the sunrise from the East Ridge. somehow captured on canvas exactly how it feels to witness dawn in this country, like being present at the world's rebirth. Wonder if she knows she's brought that same feeling to this house. To me, the most recent entry, written just days ago, Olivia says I'm a fool not to tell Naomi how I feel. Says it's obvious to everyone but her. But how can I ask her to stay when San Francisco offers everything she's worked for? To love someone is to want their happiness above your own, even if that happiness takes them away from you. Naomi closed the journal, pressing it to her chest. The simple honesty of Owen's words, never meant for her eyes, touched her more deeply than any flowery declaration could have. By morning, her fear had transformed into determination. Whatever Wilson planned, she would not be his victim again. They reached Helena by midday, riding directly to the courthouse. To Wilson's visible dismay, Judge Morrison was indeed available, and Charles had arrived before them. The hearing was held immediately in the judge's chambers. Wilson presented his case first, spinning a tale of Naomi as his protégé who had stolen valuable paintings and attacked him in a fit of artistic temperament. These paintings represent thousands of dollars of investment, Wilson concluded. Materials, housing, training, all provided by me under a contract Miss Kent willfully violated. Judge Morrison, a white-haired man with shrewd eyes, turned to Naomi. Miss Kent, how do you respond to these charges? Naomi stood, her voice stronger than she expected. Your Honor, I did sign a contract with Mr. Wilson, after he had my father falsely arrested and threatened to let him die in prison. The judge's eyebrows rose. That's a serious accusation. I have proof. Owen interjected, producing a packet of letters. These are from the prison warden in Denver, detailing how Wilson repeatedly blocked medical care for Professor Kent, then mysteriously allowed it after his daughter began working for him. Wilson surged to his feet. This is preposterous. Those letters could be forgeries. I also have the original contract, Naomi continued, removing it from her portfolio. Note the clause on the final page, that all works created while under Mr. Wilson's protection belong exclusively to him, as does the artist until the contract's completion. Judge Morrison examined the document, his frown deepening. This contract borders on indentured servitude, Mr. Wilson. It would be unenforceable in any decent court. The girl knew what she was signing, Wilson insisted. And regardless, she still took paintings that, completed or not, belonged to me under our agreement. I took only my preliminary sketches and personal works, Naomi countered. And I've since compensated Mr. Wilson with new paintings worth far more than those I had with me. The judge leaned back in his chair. Is this true, Mr. Wilson? Cornered, Wilson nodded reluctantly. She did provide some paintings, yes, but that doesn't excuse the assault. The assault occurred when Mr. Wilson attempted to force himself on me, Naomi said clearly, though her cheeks burned with the public admission. I defended myself with the only object at hand. The room fell silent. Judge Morrison studied Wilson with new disgust. Marshall, the judge finally said, I'm dismissing all charges against Miss Kent. In fact, I'm inclined to investigate Mr. Wilson for coercion, false imprisonment, and filing false charges. Wilson's face contorted with rage. You can't do this. Do you know who I am in Denver? This is Montana territory, Mr. Wilson. Your Denver connections mean little here. The judge banged his gavel. Case dismissed. Outside the courthouse, Naomi felt light-headed with relief. Owen caught her elbow, steadying her. It's over, he said softly. Truly over this time. Wilson stormed past them, pausing only to spit a final threat. You've made a powerful enemy today, Marshall. Both of you will regret this. Owen stepped forward, his voice level but carrying unmistakable warning. Threaten her again, Wilson, and you'll learn what regret really means. They watched as Wilson and his men mounted their horses and rode away, presumably back to Denver. Do you think he'll try again? Naomi asked, still trembling slightly from the confrontation. Owen shook his head. Not after Judge Morrison's threat of investigation. Men like Wilson only prey on those they see as powerless. He squeezed her hand. You're not powerless anymore, Naomi. That evening, they stayed at Helena's finest hotel, courtesy of Mr. Parker, who had heard of their arrival and insisted on hosting them. Over dinner in the hotel restaurant, the businessman could barely contain his excitement. 3 galleries in San Francisco have expressed interest in your work, Miss Kent, he explained. based solely on my descriptions and the small piece I sent as a sample. They're prepared to offer significant sums for a collection. Naomi glanced at Owen, whose expression remained supportive despite the shadow in his eyes. That's very flattering, Mr. Parker, she said carefully. But I've been reconsidering my plans. Oh, Parker looked surprised. But San Francisco has been your goal all along, hasn't it? Goals can change when circumstances do. She took a deep breath. I'm thinking of establishing my studio permanently at Silverleaf Ranch. The Montana landscapes inspire me, and there seems to be growing interest in my work even here in the territory. Owen's head snapped up. Naomi, you don't have to. I want to, she interrupted. If the offer still stands. Parker looked between them, understanding dawning on his face. Well, the galleries would be disappointed, but I suppose they could send representatives to Montana. He chuckled. In fact, being less accessible might only increase the value of your work. Collectors love a story about traveling to some remote ranch to acquire paintings from a reclusive artist. Later, walking through the hotel garden under a canopy of stars, Owen finally asked the question that had hovered between them all evening. Did you mean what you said? About staying at Silverleaf? Naomi stopped beside a rose trellis, gathering her courage. I read your journal, she admitted. Olivia gave it to me. Owen's face flushed. She had no right to. I'm glad she did. Naomi stepped closer. Because now I know what you've been afraid to tell me. And his voice was barely above a whisper. And I feel the same way. She placed her hand over his heart. San Francisco was a dream born from desperation. A place to run to when I had nowhere else. But now I have somewhere I belong. Someone I belong with. Owen covered her hand with his own. I never wanted to hold you back. You don't. You give me roots so I can grow. She smiled up at him. I love you, Owen Marshall. Not because you saved me, but because you saw me, really saw me, when I was at my lowest. And you believed in me before I could believe in myself. The moonlight silvered his face as emotion flooded his eyes. I love you too, Naomi Kent. Have since that first day, I think, though I was too stubborn to admit it. When he lowered his lips to hers, the kiss felt like coming home. Tender at first, then deepening with months of unspoken longing. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer, and Naomi wound her fingers into his hair, memorizing the moment with an artist's attention to detail. Marry me, Owen whispered against her lips. Build a life with me at Silverleaf. Paint the world as you see it, and I'll make sure everyone sees it through your eyes. Yes, Naomi answered without hesitation. Yes to all of it. 2 years later, Silverleaf Ranch had transformed. The once modest ranch house now boasted an expanded wing with a proper studio, its tall windows capturing the northern light artists coveted. The walls throughout displayed Naomi Marshall's evolving work, landscapes that critics from as far as New York praised for their raw emotional honesty and revolutionary understanding of Western light. Twice yearly, collectors and gallery owners made the journey to Montana, competing for the limited number of paintings Naomi released for sale. The exclusivity only increased their value, and the Silverleaf name became synonymous with both fine art and quality cattle. On a warm June evening, Owen returned from the north pasture to find his wife in the garden, sketching while their infant son slept in a basket beside her. At 10 months old, James Thomas Marshall had his father's hazel eyes and his mother's artistic temperament. How are my favorite people? Owen asked, pressing a kiss to Naomi's temple before crouching to stroke their son's cheek. Perfectly content, Naomi replied, setting aside her sketchbook to accept a proper kiss from her husband. Though your son refused his nap until I brought him outside. Already knows where the best views are, Owen said proudly. Future rancher and art critic. Naomi laughed. Speaking of critics, a letter came from that Boston newspaper. They want to send a reporter to interview the remarkable Mrs. Marshall who has single-handedly changed the art world's perception of the American West. Owen settled beside her on the bench. Will you agree? Perhaps, though their perception of me is rather dramatic. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm just painting what I love. And that's why they're remarkable, Owen said softly. Because they come from love. As the sun began its descent behind the mountains, painting the sky in the very colors that had made Naomi famous, they sat together in the peaceful garden of the home they had built. From starving artist to celebrated painter, from lonely cowboy to proud husband and father, Their journey had transformed them both. The Silverleaf Ranch, once simply a cattle operation fighting for survival, had become a place of beauty and creativity, known throughout the country for both its art and its heart. And at its center stood Owen and Naomi Marshall, who had found in each other not just love, but the courage to reimagine what their lives could be. That night, as moonlight spilled through their bedroom window, Owen traced the curve of Naomi's shoulder with gentle fingers. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't found you that day on the road?" he asked. Naomi turned in his arms, studying the beloved face that she had painted countless times but never tired of observing. "No," she said simply, "because even if you hadn't found me then, I believe we would have found each other eventually. Some souls are meant to meet." Owen smiled, pulling her closer. "Well, I'm grateful we didn't have to wait any longer than we did." Outside their window, the vast Montana sky sparkled with stars, while inside, the family that had begun with one simple act of kindness, a cowboy offering help to a starving artist, slept peacefully, their future as bright and promising as the paintings that had made their ranch famous.